this is Jenny with Norna Scraps. Well, summer's over. It's time to get back to work. I've missed you guys. Over the summer, I've done a lot of in the hoop projects as far as quilting, and I've had a blast with them. I need a good design, you name it. There's a bunch of places out there. I have discovered this amazing site called Sweet Pea Embroidery. Her stuff, Annette's stuff, is just gorgeous. It's versatile. There's a lot to choose from, and it stitches well with great directions. That's the design that I'm going to be using today, is the Freeform Table Runner from Sweet Pea Designs, and I'm going to show you how I have learned to use my Embrilliance suite software not just as a digitizing tool, but as a very practical layout tool in creating in the hoop designs. Let's get busy. I've opened a new page in Embrilliance, and you can see I have my hoop. I am in the Create menu. I have my basic tools. And I want to say at this point, this can happen with any of the Embrilliance softwares, Enthusiast, Essentials, and StitchArtist. So it's just one of those things that's not advertised, but by playing you discover. Amazing. I am going to make a few adjustments so that I can use this to my benefit as a layout tool. The first thing I am going to do is I am going to turn off the hoop. So I go to the tool menu in Embrilliance, select View, and deselect Draw Hoop. Click on it so that the check mark goes away, and you can see that my hoop has also disappeared. Now I can turn it back on if I want it, but I find this easier for my eyes. The next thing I'm going to do is import my files. So I'm going to go to, merge my files, merge my stitch files, navigate to the location on my computer where I store them, which is under My Embroidery Designs. I usually store my designs in a file named first for the designer or the place where I found them. In this situation, it'd be Sweet Pea, and then the name of the collection, my Freeform Table Runner. I select on that, and I'm going to select my 5x7 for my Janome machine. Now I can select one file to import, or I can select multiple files to import. In this case, I'm going to select multiple. I'm going to select each one of the different blocks that comes in this collection. To do that, now to select one, all I have to do is click on it. Green arrow shows it's selected. But to select all four, I'm going to hold my Shift key on my Mac and simply click. And that selects all four in the collection. Now I'm going to go to the menu bar, toolbar, and select Import. And it looks like a mess, but as you look at the Objects menu, I have each one of my designs imported into this software. Now let's move out just a little bit. I'm going to separate my blocks by clicking on them, or I can click on them over in the Objects menu and just simply move them around so I get a better idea of what each one of these quilt blocks looks like. That looks pretty good. I'm going to zoom into one because if you aren't familiar with Sweet Pea, it's a little bit different. They all are. And it would probably be worth your time to just take a quick look and maybe run through the stitch visualizer in Embrilliance and see what stitches first. I can tell you that this outside area, the larger of the blocks, is actually the finished stitching line. In other words, that's the line that I will be using to connect my blocks in the end. This inside block that I have highlighted, and it's kind of hard to see, let me go quickly in. This inside block right here is actually the stitch that tacks down my batting. There's a little bit less stitching in these particular designs than there is in others that I've found. So when I align my blocks, I'm going to align this outside stitching line with this outline stitching line. And that's going to most reasonably simulate what my final product will look like. So let's get busy arranging our quilt. Zoom out so you can see, and I'm going to move my blocks side by side And they don't have to be perfect because this is just a tool. Okay. I am not going to send my blocks to my machine from here. My machine would absolutely think I was nuts. Now, if you have multi-hooping capability, you might be able to, and it might be worth investigating. I, unfortunately, at this point, don't. So, here is, I'm just going to line them a little bit more closely. Like I said, I'm really sweating the small stuff, and you don't need to. And that's a pretty good visualization of what my blocks would look like if I stitched them out. Let's say this is exactly what I want to stitch out, just the 4 blocks. It's not going to be a very big table runner, but maybe for the top of a dresser. What does this information tell me? Number 1, if this is the layout I've selected, I stitch 1 of each block. I know that ahead of time. My planning is done. I can finish it in the end. I might want to redo the order based on my fabrics, but it can also tell me that if I'm going to use a certain fabric here, I may or may not want to replicate that fabric here. It's my choice. So that information can come from here. I can print this out, and I'm going to show you in just a moment how I choose to do that. The other thing that it tells me, and this is one of the reasons I actually started doing this, I like to not trim my batting completely to that batting tack down line on certain edges. Not all edges, just certain ones. And the edges I do not trim to that tack down line are the edges that will be on the outside of my product. The outside of my product. Why not? Well, I like to use a 1/2 inch of binding, and I like my batting to be included in my binding. So what I see here is that on the short end of this block, the long end of this block, the short end on this side, I would not trim my batting. Again, I would not trim the batting, watch where my arrow goes, on these 3 edges. And I need to know ahead of time which blocks are the ones that I'm not going to trim all of the edges. I would, however, because this is a join right in here, I would trim up to the batting line. So basically, it cuts down my time stitching. It also is going to give me a very nice finished product because when I trim my edges on my finished block, I just simply trim the final block on this side. I don't do any other trimming. I take my printed paper, which I'm going to show you as soon as I finish here, and I write which edges I'm going to trim on. Which edges. So how do I print it? Well, let's go to the print feature on the Embrilliance software. Let's go to File, Print, and what I have here is a bunch of pages, which is fine. I can do this, especially in the end. It gives me my layout of my colors, so I know exactly what's stitching when. But remember, this could be tricky because I will only send individual designs, not the entire product, to my printer. So I don't want to confuse myself. So I may or may not use this. If you're happy with this, you can actually set up your page. And I have tried going to the, let's go here, page setup for printing. And I have tried decreasing the scale, putting it on landscape. And this is what I end up with. I end up a little better. Now remember, that was 10% of the original. So I really should be getting most of this on one page, and I'm still not getting it. It may be my printer. I'm not really sure. I really don't think it is. My preferred method is simply by taking my magnifying glass, scanning around it, and creating a border. Then I do on my Mac, I do a screen capture. To do that, I can do Shift Command 4, and that's how my Mac is set up. And you have to do that in your Mac preferences. Draw my box, get a screen capture, and it will automatically show up on my desktop. If I move down, don't look at my messy desktop, but you can see my screen capture right here. There it is. Now I can annotate that in screen capture, or I can print out like that, and I can actually make notations as to what I'm going to do. My example is one I did earlier, and you can see that I have written and asterisked any place that I want to actually leave a 1/2 inch of a seam allowance. It's a great tool to have, and it's a wonderful tool to know how to do screen captures. If you have a problem, you can actually Google screen capture on and type in your type of operating system, and you'll get really good directions on how to do it. Why else would I want to lay out my quilt? Let's say I don't want to do 4 different blocks. I just want to use a combination of 1. Quickly, I'm going to select and delete all of my blocks except 1. So this is my block of choice in this particular pattern. And I'm going to be playing with the horizontal, the rotate, and many other features, those features, not many other, there's a few left. I'm going to take and I'm going to copy this block, which is Command-C in my Mac, Control-C on a PC, and then I'm going to paste it. Again, Command-V on my Mac, Control-V on a PC. And if you look at the Objects menu, you can see that I have 2 blocks now. Let's move it out. Now I could just simply keep adding, or I can start manipulating my blocks. Let's do a horizontal mirror with the block selected. I can select it in the Objects menu, or I could select it here. Horizontal mirror. Well, that gives me a little bit different look, because if you look at the leaves, they've actually rotated around and are opposite of this. Let's do a vertical mirror and see what we get. Now this is more where I'm going. So now I have, it almost looks like swirls, but I really, let's zoom in, want to make it look like I've done my leaf pattern. So now I'm going to once again horizontal mirror it, align it, and look at that. Isn't that cool? And watch what happens now when I zoom out. I wish I could set a zoom feature. I've tried the numbers and they don't want to work on my computer. Select both blocks. Again, copy, Command-C, Control-C, paste, Command-C, Control-V. And here I have now elements creating other shapes. Again, I am simply going to horizontal rotate, and look at the swirl that has happened with the bubbles. This could be a really exciting pattern if I use my choice of fabrics, print it out, and just show myself how I'm going to have to lay out my particular blocks. Now the beauty of doing this is that if I've rotated my block in my Embrilliance suite, I can actually send the rotated version to my computer, my sewing machine, and I have 2 separate blocks, 2 different blocks that are already set up and good to go as far as the way they stitch. Let's delete this, and let's delete this, and I'm going to zoom in, and I can actually take and I can save, because this is the original block, I can save this as the rotated design, get rid of my original, and just the one I rotated. I can add my hoop back in, and we're going to go with the 18, apply. Okay, now I don't have a hoop. Remember, I turned it off. Let's go back to View, Draw Hoop, and turn it on. And I'm going to move my hoop. I'm going to use my center. I don't want to fit it to the hoop. Center the hoop to the, or center the design to the hoop. and I'm going to File, Save As, and I have to remember where I saved it. I'm probably going to go to the Table Runner and save it as Design 1 or Freeform 1 rotated. That way I know I've manipulated it, I've changed it, and then I can send it to the machine like that. Please remember this works with any in the hoop embroidery quilting block. I hope you've learned something that you can apply and you can make your projects truly your own. Until next time, bye.